So now we are going to move into a specific subject of tonight and of the main subject of this series, and this is the encounter between this Ottoman Turkish classic music and Hebrew poetry in religious but non-liturgical events. So, to warm up, as I did day before yesterday, we're going to hear, actually now we're going also to see a Turkish piece, again to remember how this music sounds, and we're going also to see the main instruments of Turkish music. What is important is that the Jews do not use instruments in the synagogue during the Sabbath, where this liturgical, para-liturgical poetry is performed. And therefore, what they did was to adapt Hebrew poetry to genres which sometimes are instrumental. So instead of playing them, they sing them. Now, I will going to say more about the Hebrew poetry and how this tradition of mixing Hebrew poetry with Ottoman music came after we will talk a little bit about the musical instruments and see a piece and hear, and then we will continue. So we have tambur, it's a lute, long neck, very, very, very long neck, because in Turkish music there are many notes, many notes. You remember, every tone, do, re, there are 4 sounds inside, so you need a very long neck. So this is the classic instrument of Ottoman court, of the Ottoman music, of the Sultan. Oud, if you remember, I mentioned oud, so here we have oud, very short neck. Oud is more important in Arabic music. In Turkish music, tambur more important, but in the ensemble, this is also very important. Kanun, if you remember, I mentioned kanun. It's a zither, okay? It's on the laps of the player, and player plays on the strings. And there are 72 strings. Kemanja, Turkish violin, kemanja. And it's not played like Western violin, but like this. Like many similar instruments in Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, same instrument. Ney, flute. And the flute is done from a cane, okay? There are many sizes, and here you see already something that we will mention. The flute, this flute is very important among the mystic circles of the Ottoman Empire, particularly Mevlevi sect. So this is a Mevlevi monk playing the flute. And finally, drums, kudum, which is similar to Indian tabla. And so 2 drums is like timpani in symphony orchestra, but small, okay? Kudum. Can you see? Famous, very famous recording of ensemble kanun.
Gönül verdim bir civane, ben seni vermem ki aman aman aman.
Tambur, very famous master of tambur, Maestro Necdet Yaşar from Istanbul. And this recording was done 35 years ago. Kemanca,
Ey gülü bana öyle, sana oldum müptela. Ey gülü bana öyle, sana oldum müptela. Gel bana eyle vefa, sana oldum müptela. Sevdim saydım, sana oldum müptela. Sevdim saydım, sana oldum müptela.
you heard that there were different pieces put together. There was introduction, kanun, then there was singer, then there was solo of tambur, then there was singer. This is very important principle of Ottoman music, a suite of pieces. Okay, now solo instruments, no beat, improvisation. Singer had beat, and the song has what I call a strophic structure. That is to say, there is stanza, 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 and the music repeats. Okay? So now you have the Turkish music on your head, on your memory. Okay? So now you will see what happens in the Jewish tradition. I will play you a piece, very, very old recording from Jews from Istanbul, just for you to compare the sound. However, no instruments in the Jewish recording, only voices, okay? The recording is commercial, so there is, from the commercial recordings I play, a little piece at the beginning, but then you will see that it disappears. So this is introduction, the same like we heard in the instrument, but it's vocal, and the text is a verse from the Bible. And you can hear how similar the way of singing is between the Muslim singer we saw before and the Jewish singer. So now we are going to hear second piece, again from the same series of early 20th century recordings from Istanbul. And we're going to hear second feature which is unique to Jews, and this is choral singing. So the whole group of people in the synagogue sing together this Ottoman piece set to a Hebrew poem.
Yishlach misham ma'im odim ha'ozi ha'nosi korban alehai sanken afehat tirei ki atamahsi korban alehai yaram habibi shemon ikra
Okay, Hebrew poet, religious context, Turkish classical music. This choir was called in Turkish maftirin. And you have in your handout an article by me that appeared in Istanbul very recently. And it includes this project that you can see here. Okay, I'm not selling this. Project of the Jewish community in Istanbul to publish all the songs that in Hebrew that the oldest singers that have the memory of this repertoire remember. And there are only 60-something compositions. This is Istanbul 2010. Now we will go back again in history a little bit, okay, to see how we got to this. If you remember, yesterday I just go back to my maps, okay? Sephardic Jews in Spain, medieval period, they under Arab conquest, under the Arab Empire, developed very rich culture, literary culture, with very rich poetry. And this continued from the 9th, 10th century until the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 15th century. And the Jews, the Sephardic Jews, took with them this poetical tradition all around the Mediterranean Sea. And they continue to develop this tradition in the new lands where they settled. For our purposes here, one place is very, very important, and it's here in the north of Israel, and it's called Tzfat in Hebrew. Tzfat early 16th century becomes very important center for Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. I won't go now into details about Kabbalah, but and Kabbalah is not always Jewish mysticism, and Jewish mysticism is not always Kabbalah, but that's too complicated for now. We don't need that. What is important, Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, that in this period, early 16th century in Safed, the idea of music as very important aspect of Jewish spirituality becomes extremely important. We have the continuation of Hebrew poetry, but now the subjects are new. And the two main new subjects are national redemption and the idea that by praying very hard, with hard intentions, with the best music, you can accelerate the processes in the higher spheres. So we have Tzfat, Eretz Israel, and all the areas of settlement of Sephardic Jews is the Ottoman Empire. Jews become to participate in musical life of imperia. And it's not only Jews, something I forgot to say, to repeat last time, also all the Christians who are in these areas, Greeks, Armenians, they all participate on a musical lingua franca. And in the Ottoman Empire there are several, we already spoke, I won't repeat, several genres of music. There is more art music in the court, and there is more popular music in the coffee houses in the city, and then there is village music. So there are several types, and we are going to talk mostly about the higher type that develops in the courts, but also very important in the monasteries of the Sufis of Mevlevi sect. And Mevlevi are very famous even today, more as a touristic attraction, but at the time in the 16th century there is a big influence of Mevlevi on the court of the Sultan. There is a, how can I say, no division between church and state. It's one into the other. And what it's interesting for Mevlevi Sufi sect, that most of the liturgy, it's like a concert. It's instrumental music, vocal music, and most important, dance. Whirling dance, and this is why usually in international festivals they are called the whirling dervishes. Now we will continue to fuse Hebrew poetry and Turkish music and see how it works. There are, again, basic forms of Turkish music. We heard vocal instrumental pieces, and we heard improvised and fixed, and also we said that there are suites. Now, fasil is the name of a secular suite, a suite performed, let's say, in a party at the house of a minister, etc. Ain is the name of the Mevlevi suite. So there is a parallel in the concept of composition between the secular and the religious sphere, and there are also some dance tunes, but this is less important. We already mentioned Taksim is the name of the instrumental improvisation. Gazelle is the name of the vocal improvised style. If you remember, the improvisation is developing makam. Makam has an order of melodic ideas and an order of pitch, of tones, and the musician develops this while he is improvising. And there are specific forms, genres. You remember we mentioned sonata, etc. So some of the important forms of Turkish music, samai, which is like a rondo in Western music. So you have one piece which it's called A, and repeats in between different pieces, A, B, A, C, A, D, A, etc. And all samai is always in 10/8. It has a specific cycle, and all the pieces have the same music cycle. Okay? Peshrev is the same but much larger, heavy piece, and also modulatory. That is, every new part, B, C, D, will be in different makam. And Sharki is more of a popular song. Here you see that Sharki was more song of the coffee house that also entered the classical music, which is also happened in Western music. I won't go into that, but the division between high culture and low culture is not always very strict. I will play Sharki. I will play Sharki so that you hear again. This is in Turkish, but it's a very famous song in this genre called Sharki by a Jewish composer. What I'm trying to show you is that there is an overlapping between the context of the music and the context of the performers. That is to say, Jews composed for the synagogue, but also composed for the general public. When they did for the synagogue is in Hebrew, for general public is in Turkish. Okay? Name of the composer, this is very important, names of musicians. Misirli Udi Ibrahim Levi. That is to say, Misirli, because he was born in Masr in Egypt and moved to Istanbul. Udi, because he was an oud player. Abraham Levi, he was from Levi family, okay? You remember, musicians are called by the instruments they play, okay? Tamburi, udi, kanuni, etc. Sharki, nihavent. Nihavent, name of makam. So always the piece is called after the makam. Sharki, nihavent. This music sounds a little bit more familiar to you. Why? Why?
It's harmonized.
Like belly dance.
Like belly dance? But that's,
For me.
yeah, that's stereotype. That's not good. Not good.
Some instruments are playing something like harmony. It's not
Very good.
equal to harmony, but
He's professional. So yeah, yeah.
arpeggio.
Arpeggio.
Yeah. And
Very
makes
good.
it completely not-
But
not-
something more simple. You know too much. Something more simple. Beat. It has beat. Yeah, very beat, and it's really sounds like it is a minor mode, like Western minor mode. Da, ri, ra, 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 ra. It sounds very Western, very similar. Okay, when I sing it, sounds more even Western. No? Yeah? Could be a Russian romance. Yeah. Now, this is because Makamni event is almost minor. And because this is a composition of already 20th century, early 20th century, there is a lot of Western influence. And because the musicians also know some Western music, they do a little harmony. You remember you were asking me, so here you have a little harmony, arpeggios, or doubling the voices in thirds. So it's like sounds much more Western. Context of performance of Makam-oriented music in Jewish communities, I already said, but now we are going to review. We have religious, and as I said, we have religious in the liturgy, that is to say, in the prayers that you must say, and also we have paraliturgical or non-liturgical religious music, which is basically the singing of piyutim by groups like maftirim in events of mystical background. And we have also music in non-religious events with mostly life cycle events like weddings, and I mean the wedding and the circumcision in a way are a religious event, but mostly the repertoires that are performed are already beyond the religious ceremony, like love songs and balladas, etc. And this is what we are going to hear tomorrow from Adas Palyarden. This is why I never use the word secular when I speak about traditional Jewish communities. There were just different contexts of musical performance. There wasn't something not related at all with religion. And an important aspect of this division is the voice of women. In religious, in synagogue liturgy and paraliturgical events, in traditional, in old Jewish communities, no women voices. In life cycle, yes, women voices. Okay, this is very important. And in the singing of religious, again, I'm going very fast because we don't have a lot of time. But in the singing of the liturgy, we have different texts, different types of texts. We have the reading of the Bible, which has a very special way of being sung in music. But what is important just for us is that when you go in Turkey to synagogue and you hear reading of the Torah, the intonation is makam intonation, even though the genre of music is the traditional singing of Torah. So makam even enters the inner core of the liturgy. So paraliturgical events, some important elements. When it happens, when it is performed in early morning Sabbath vigils. People used to get up 3 o'clock in the morning in the Sabbath to sing religious poems with mystical intentions on mystical background. Again, as an additional, if you want, religious effort in order to accelerate religious historical processes. Some of these messianic ideas are the result of the expulsion from Spain. This event was conceived as a major disaster and created an anxiety for redemption. Jews ask themselves why we are suffering so much all the time. Can something be done to repair? Perhaps we are not being religious enough, or we are not doing the right things. So The liturgical and paraliturgical texts I already mentioned. We have different types of texts. There are texts in prose, and there are post-biblical prayers. If you remember, we spoke about Aneinu, that's a post-biblical prayer. However, what is important now for us is piyut. An important word, piyut, means poem or Hebrew poem, Hebrew religious poem. And what I always teach people to know that piyut is a new Hebrew word, no piyut in the Bible, no piyut in the Bible, and it comes under Greek influence in the Byzantine Empire. So it's related to the word poet, poeta, piyut, okay? So basically maftirin is, now we can put everything together. Maftirin is an association of singers, male Jewish singers that get together in the synagogues, in the Sabbath, in the middle of the night. Not now modern period. If you go to Istanbul, they don't like to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. They do that in Sabbath afternoon, between Mincha and Aravit, Ma'ariv. In Jerusalem, similar tradition is called bakashot, and it's still 3 o'clock in the morning in Jerusalem. So if you come to visit me, I'll take you 3 o'clock in the morning, but only in winter session, between the end of the holidays, October, and Purim, March. Okay, so this is Bakashot season, and it's very spiritual. You walk in Sabota, Jerusalem. Nobody's in the street, only people going to synagogue. Everything is very quiet, and when you get synagogue, you have this big choir singing, and there are 2 or 3 women that serve chai to the people attending. Yeah, I won't go into technicalities, but all piyutim are in different forms, and most of these forms are classical Arabic forms. All of them are strophic, that is to say, we have stanzas, and different types of rhymes. Okay, I won't go into detail. So the performance of bakashot is like the Mevlevi. We have a suite of many piyutim in different makams, and we have soloists, and we have a choir, and we have a group of different songs performed one after the other. And in between the songs, there are vocal improvisations, sometimes on the first line of the next song, and many times they just take a verse, as we heard, a verse from the Bible, usually from Psalms, and they improvise on that. And all this corpus of texts span over 1,000 years. We have some poems by the great poets of Al-Andalus, 10th, 11th century, like Shlomo ibn Gvirol, Yehuda Levi, Avraham ibn Ezra, that continue to be transmitted all the time, 1,000 years. And then we have 16th century poetry from Tzfat, from Safed, mystical, Kabbalistic poetry from 16th, 17th century on Safed, and then more modern poetry. All the time, every generation had poets composing new texts, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century to 20th century. Here you have Hebrew manuscript, Ottoman Hebrew manuscript, written in Hebrew, even though this looks like Arabic, okay? So every singer had a compilation of songs for his own use. Now, I just will show you, this is the beginning of a song, and it says who is the writer of the song, and the second word is the name of Makam in Hebrew, okay? And most of these pieces are based on Turkish compositions. That is to say, the manuscript, like here, okay, says you sing this song in Hebrew according to the Turkish song, blah, 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 blah. Okay? In older manuscripts, we still have many piyutim written also to melodies in Spanish. That is to say, the songs in Ladino that people used to know, they used to say, sing this piut according to the song Si yo amare a un caballero, okay, or something like that, okay? And what is interesting here, visual too, if you can see here, you don't need to know Hebrew. This is la, 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 el. And they imitated in Hebrew the vowels of Turkish songs. So in Turkish you say aman, 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 and in Hebrew they wrote amen, amen, amen. Or rahim, 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 rahum, rahum, rahum. It's the same word, okay? So you see that this is a manuscript of a singer. It's not a scholar of poetry, but this is a person who also writes down all the vocalizations of the song to remember. And here you have the only modern printed collection of Turkish piyutim for maftirim. There is only one edition printed in Istanbul, 1925-26, and you see the title Neginat Makam Segia Sol. That is to say, all these poems are according to Makam Segia, which starts on the note Sol, because by then solfege was already taught in the conservatories in Istanbul, and the Jews also knew what is the tone of Makam Segia. So this is the text of our next musical example, and this is a very famous song in repertoire of Maftirim. And you see little Hebrew letters, Rashi letters at the beginning, written Lachan Peshrev Siman Israel. I will explain. Okay, what is you already translated Melodia? Okay, Melodia of Peshrev, but they don't say which Peshrev. There are hundreds of Peshrev. I will tell you because I know who wrote this composition. But before that, Siman means acrostic. That is to say, the first stanza of each, the first letter of each stanza compose the name of the poet, Israel. You have Yud, Shin, Reish, El. Okay, Israel. The poet wrote his name inside the poem. So I'm bringing you this song because it's not only very well known, but also is by the greatest poet of Sfat and Syria. He lived most of his life in Damascus in the late 16th century, early 17th century. The greatest Hebrew poet and probably one of the greatest Jewish musicians in history. His name was Rabbi Israel Najara. His father came from Spain, and he composed something like almost 1,000 piyutim. And he was the first one to arrange his piyutim according to Makam. And how do we know that he had contact with non-Jewish musicians? Because his enemies in the Jewish community accused him that they saw him on a coffee house without his head covered, singing songs and drinking wine. Now you see what? You see in the text that a lot of these verses are biblical quotations. That is to say, this poetry emanates from the Bible. So you see, what is important for me is the last line, which is eventually the refrain, Ad matai ketz pelaot esmach yagel kevodi. Until when the miracles will stop. So he is writing after the expulsion from Spain. He says in the Bible there are all the time miracles. The Jewish people is saved. You know, in the Red Sea is saved. And and now there are no miracles. When it's the end of the era without miracles going to be? So, at the beginning of the lecture, we saw Tambur Master Nejdet Yashar. The video was made at the University of Washington, Seattle, because Nejdet Yashar came to give a seminar on Turkish music. and Benaroya went to hear his concert. So the first piece was Peshrev Makam Segia, the same melody of the poetry by Najjar. So Benaroya told me the story. He said, he went to the concert, he said, these Turks, they are playing our music, Jewish music, okay? He didn't know that the melody of the Peshrev is by a famous Sufi Mevlevi poet, composer, Yusuf Pasha, Neyzen Yusuf Pasha, Neyzen, play of the Ney, 19th century composer. So this is the best story I have for you to show you what I mean by encounters. That is to say, in the 19th century, someone among the Maftirim put the poem of Najjar, 16th century, into the Peshrev by Yusuf Pasha, but the memory of this encounter was lost. For Benaroya, this was a Jewish song. So we are going to listen now, Yehemeh Levavi. Long piece. The memory of this man, he was 85 years old. He didn't sing this song for 50 years. And when I recorded him, you saw he was almost blind. So he was using a magnifier glass, okay? I mentioned that. And he was singing and he was crying because 50 years he didn't sing this song. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое.